Good morning, everybody. I think we have most people with us now, so we will make a start on our webinar for the WPD Green Recovery Call for Evidence. Just to let you know who I am, I'm Christian Yelm. I'm the Network Design Manager for Western Power Distribution. That means basically my team is responsible for connections at 33,000 volts and above, connections to our network, and also for some of the strategic investment in our network. I'm joined today by Paul Andrews, who is our Primary System Design Team Manager for the Southwest of England, and also Michael Clark, who works in our Corporate Communications team. And Michael will be looking at some of the questions that come through during the webinar. We're also assisted today by Helpful Digital, Tally and Julie, so thank you to them, who are working with us behind the scenes, so hopefully we won't have too many technical issues. So just before we start, a bit of housekeeping. The webinar will last about 45 minutes. We're looking at about 20 minutes to go through some of the slides. If you have any technical issues during the webinar, please use the chat function on your device, whether it's an iPad or on a laptop. And if you have any, that will go through to Julie, who will try and help you. If you have questions specific for us to answer, try to answer at the end, please use the Q&A button as part of this webinar. We've got a large turnout today, which is great, absolutely wonderful, but it will probably mean quite a lot of questions. So some will be answered by us during the webinar themselves by written response. And others will ask at the end. Michael will ask me and Paul, and we'll try and answer them at the end of the presentations. What I would ask, if possible, is that because this is a webinar to do with the call for evidence and the process of what we're looking to do, try to target your questions around that. If you have got specific questions about specific projects, we may not be able to get to those today, but you can always email those through to us, or indeed ask the people you're currently dealing with at Western Power. But certainly generic questions on what we're up to are most welcome. So moving on to make a start. So Western Power. Now, I know many of you who joined today will already know who we are and what we do, so I don't intend to spend a lot of time going through that, but I'm conscious that there may not be, not everybody will be aware of what Western Power do and who we are, so I'll go through that fairly quickly to give everybody a summary. We are the electricity network distribution company for large parts of England, the Midlands and the Southwest and South Wales, and we distribute electricity to nearly 8 million homes and businesses. And we do that through a large network of underground cables and overhead lines and transformers. We have 225,000 kilometres of cables and overhead lines and nearly 190,000 transformers who serve our customers. So we are a distribution network operator. We've always been a distribution network operator, and that was our traditional role. And that meant effectively we took generation, so power from the transmission system, from connected generation to that network, operated by National Grid, and we transformed it down the voltage levels, starting at 132,000 volts, all the way down to low voltage, which goes into domestic properties. And that was our traditional role. We don't supply electricity, we don't sell it, and we don't generate it. In recent times, probably over the last, certainly the last 10 years, if not the last 20 years, our role has been changing and we're evolving. So we're now also a distribution system operator, which means we also try to operate a smart and flexible network, because we now have power flowing in multiple directions through our different voltages. And that's come about over the last 20 years or so through an increasing level of generation connected directly to our network, or indeed now more recently storage devices such as batteries. So that's who we are, and we have a fairly simple task. We have 5 key things that we are responsible for as a network operator. The most important thing for us is to keep the lights on, because nobody wants to have a power cut ultimately. And we can do that effectively by maintaining our existing network, making sure it's as reliable as it can be to stop faults occurring. Faults occasionally do occur, and when they do occur, we fix that network. You'll see some of our staff out and about, up poles, putting lines back up, or digging up the roads trying to fix cables. But our ultimate aim is to minimize that as much as possible. Fourthly, we connect new customers and we upgrade networks or build new ones, which is what we're talking about today. And lastly, we now also operate a smart system. So we try to manage two-way power flows and flexibility services to try and defer some of that reinforcement. So that is what Western Power does, and hopefully many of you would have been familiar with that already. So what is the green recovery? What is the green recovery all about, and what is the call for evidence? Well, Western Power Distribution have been working alongside Ofgem and the Electricity Networks Association and the other distribution network operators in the last few months to try and come up with a plan on how we can unlock earlier investment than normal in our networks. And the principal reason for doing that is to boost green growth, jobs, and support the government's target to net zero. And the additional driver for that right now is that this will be a good initiative for the post-pandemic recovery that this country badly needs. So what we've done is launched a call for evidence, which started on Monday, the 8th of February, which was last week, and that will last for 6 weeks. All stakeholders and technologies are invited to participate in that and submit information to us about the projects that they have ready to connect to the network. Effectively, you can participate in this, and we'll talk about it again in a minute, by completing the questionnaire we have online, either electronically or sending it to us by email. That questionnaire is aimed at telling us about projects you already have in the pipeline, ready to connect effectively in the next 1 or 2 years, but where you have had potentially mainly network constraints. So when we say ready to connect, what we mean by that is you've got the finance ready for the scheme, or nearly ready, or almost certainly to be guaranteed. You have planning permission or other permissions ready or in the pipeline and likely to be okay. You have agreements with any landowners where your project is going to be built. And if the main thing that's preventing you doing that is local network constraints, then we want to hear about that project, because that will help us as additional evidence to target the investment we're making in the right areas. So at the end of the call for evidence period, we'll assess the evidence and we'll use 3 core criteria. And this is the same criteria that all the distribution companies will use to try and target that investment. First one will be utilization. So how much of the capacity might we use in the near term? So the more capacity we can use in the next couple of years, the better. So the more interest there is in an area, the better that will be. Deliverability, how quickly can the infrastructure and solutions be completed by us? So we're talking about the next 2 years. There is a real push, as I said, because of the COVID pandemic recovery, to increase growth as rapidly as we can. So things that we can achieve in the next 2 years will be shortlisted above things that will take longer to complete. That doesn't mean that those schemes won't be done, because we are currently preparing our business plans for the next price review period, starting in 2023 and running until 2028. And there is our business plan is out for consultation, has been out for consultation, will go out for consultation again during the year. So we'll be gathering evidence in this process as well as part of that, and it will help to influence our investment plans for ED2. But principally for this initiative, it'll be what we can achieve in the next two years up until 2023. We'll also assess it against value for money, so including wider societal benefits that can be achieved I've got a slide on that in shortly. But effectively, things like local job creation and other benefits to the local local society, local communities, that sort of thing. So as part of the green recovery, what is being offered? There is more information about this on the Electricity Networks Association ENA website, which there's a link to from our website. Effectively, there will be £300 million worth of investment, up to £300 million worth of investment across the country. And WPD will be looking to invest up to £80 million of that in our network. Because we have 4 of the original electricity network areas, that's up to £20 million worth of network investment per licence area between now and 2023. We'll be investing to upgrade and build new electrical infrastructure in substations, enabling more green developments, such as EV chargers, heat pumps, renewable generation, and other low carbon technologies to connect to the network. What we've done is already identified areas where we know historically of interest in LCT projects, and where we're already aware of some network restrictions. So investment will then unlock additional capacity in those chosen areas, or indeed bring the network closer to where the third-party interest is. What we're not able to do as part of this initiative is to fund the projects you're thinking about themselves. So the funding will be to invest in the network to facilitate those connections and make it more financially viable for a number of people where the grid constraint is the current concern. Once we've built that network, customers will then seek a connection from us and pay for their own connection in a normal way. So any sole use connection assets, as we call them, meaning the bit of network from your site to the existing network, which you pay 100% of now, that will continue as before, and you will follow the normal connection application process. And once the network's built, of course, whilst the investment is aimed at areas we know where there's green growth, that network capacity will be open to all customers. So if you go to our website, what you'll see on there is this green recovery map. And this is shaded areas of distribution areas of some of our larger substations. So you can zoom in on this map on the website, and you can click on the areas, and it will show you the largest substation in the area, sort of the 33,000 to 11,000 volt substations, and the areas they serve. And this map has been based on, say, the information we're already aware of, where we know that there are some constraints, and there could be one or more constraints in those areas. And our proposals will then be to upgrade, say, substations or electricity circuits in those areas to unlock capacity. And for example, that might include a new substation in a town, for example. So there's some of the sort of pockets, let's say these sort of smaller substations you see serving housing estates. It could be a new one of those to help electric vehicle chargers or heat pumps in an area if the capacity of the network is currently limited. Or it could be upgrading a cable or an overhead line between 2 substations in a rural area, for example, where a renewable generation wants to connect but haven't been able to yet because of the cost of that background capacity. So if you go onto our website, you'll be able to see that map. And the key thing for us here is, as I've highlighted, is have we identified the right areas for investment? So what we're looking for you to do is to say, fill in the questionnaire and give us the information to help support those areas, which will help us shortlist. So the more interest there is in an area, the more stakeholders, more projects, the higher up the list it will go. But we may have missed some areas. Are there areas where you have been talking to us and you haven't been able to make a connection because there are network constraints? If there are, and we haven't shown it on this map, please tell us about those as well. That's really important. So once the evidence comes back in, what will we do with it? Well, we'll assess that evidence against the criteria in the call for evidence paper, which is also on our website. The call for evidence paper is one that's been agreed with all the distribution companies and Ofgem, and you'll see on the slide here some of the evidence we'll be looking for. And effectively, the more your project or scheme meets the different criteria, the more it will influence our investment plans. Highlighting just a few, have you received a quotation or a budget offer with high reinforcement costs? Is there community, energy, or local authority support for the plans? Are there wider societal benefits and jobs that can be created? Will it enable decarbonisation and deliver a net carbon reduction? So, for example, question 11 in the questionnaire, in the call for evidence, is the government's 10-point plan. So that allows you to tick through and highlight how your scheme benefits the 10-point plan. And the more benefit it has, the more it'll help us target investment in the right areas from that funding of £20 million per network area to ensure we get maximum benefits in the shortest period of time. And as I say, anything which any parts of the network we're not able to upgrade in the next 2 years will then be put forward for our next price control period, which will start in 2023. So what is the timeline like? Well, we've already launched call for evidence on the 8th of February. It'll last for 6 weeks. It'll end on the 19th of March. So please get your responses and information back to us by then. We'll then take some time over the following month to assess the information that's come in to enable us to shortlist the investments we want to make, meeting the 3 core criteria. And we will then, along with the other DNOs, submit that evidence and the shortlist to Ofgem for a review, which will happen in early May, with the aim at the minute to have a short list of schemes and areas where we'll start investing in from mid-May. And our plan is then to get going on things straight away, subject to normal lead times for plant and equipment and any permissions we might need, but we will be then looking to start that straight away and continue until middle of 2023. And then obviously we'll continue beyond, but it will be under a slightly different initiative. So I've already mentioned to everybody what we're effectively looking for you to do. Please go to our website, westernpower.co.uk/green-recovery, and complete the questionnaire. Inform us about your projects in the green areas on the map, and also whether we've missed any areas. The questionnaire is quite detailed, so the more information you can give us, the better. Please try to submit your responses online if you can, using the electronic facility, because that really will help us during the analysis. And the closing date for that is the 19th of March. You can email us through, though, if you're unable to do that online, to the Green Recovery mailbox. And you can also write to us at our Bristol address, which is shown on the slide now. And all this information is also on our website. So that brings us to the end of the slides and going through what we're looking for you to do. We're now open to any questions that have come through which you would like us to try and answer on this webinar. Thank you.
Hi there, Christian. Hi there, everyone. I'm Michael Clark from the Corporate Communications team at Western Power Distribution. Thank you to everyone for sending your questions through so far. We have still got around about 20 minutes, so we'll try to get through as many of those as we can. Just to let you know that the copies of the video and all of the questions will be answered and published online after the 4 sessions of webinars that we've got taking place today and tomorrow. So please keep the questions coming through. Christian, the first question we've had through has come through from Cara Naden. And it's specific to Somerset, but it's probably relevant to a lot of people on this webinar. What are WPD's plans to upgrade the grid connection in Somerset near Glastonbury for renewable energy, battery storage and EV charging community energy projects that have central government funding. Many areas in Somerset have grid constraints which have stopped community energy projects going forward. Will WPD support these initiatives by investing in grid upgrades and potentially invest in these projects too?
Okay, thank you. Very good question. I'll start the answer, and then I'll ask Paul Andrews, who knows the Southwest quite well, to come in with anything additional. Somerset is included in the green shaded areas. One thing worth saying to everybody is that there are investments we are proposing to sort of our 132,000 volt network, which are currently on our list and may well make the shortlist based on the evidence we receive. They're not shown on the map only because they cover such large areas, because they're very strategic at sort of near grid level. It would have swamped the map and it would have been meaningless. But there are things happening across Somerset which will assist. So the main thing really is to submit your evidence through and what those constraints have been and where the projects are, and we can support it. Paul, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Like you said, Christian, I think it's a good scheme to fill out the questionnaire to give us the information about, in particular, the restrictions that you might be being told about or being offered in the connection offers that you may have with us. In terms of the reinforcement being put forward as it stands, that is some 33 kV reinforcement, which is north of the Bridgewater area, which is difficult to say whether that will help your connection in the Glastonbury area. But we do also have some other schemes that are going on under our general ED1 reinforcement programme, which for the Bridgewater Street area, which would definitely help the Glastonbury area, is a new grid transformer, so 33 capacity into that area. So hopefully that should help your project as well.
Thanks, Paul.
Right, next question comes through from John Selman. And the question is there a minimum scale of development that WPD is interested in for this call for evidence? Many installations may be small scale, but have cumulative impacts on the network.
Thank you, Michael. That's another good question. Probably answer in two parts. It's difficult to define a minimum. But what I would say is focus it in on where, I mean, if you're able to connect those developments now, and there aren't any wider network constraints, but you obviously have to pay for the connection to the network itself, then it's not one which necessarily we need to know about. But cumulatively, yes, if particularly in local authority areas, if you have got initiatives and areas where you're looking for to install heat pumps, for example, or larger electric vehicle charging infrastructure, then yeah, cumulatively those will have an impact, and if that will be useful information for us, because it will also, even if there aren't necessarily immediate network constraints, it will show a large interest in that area of that town or village or city, which will help us to then target investment in that area, particularly if there's interest in other projects in that area as well. So there isn't a minimum, but I would suggest that if there is a program in an area, then that will be useful information.
Thanks, Christian. Next question has come through from Gareth Davis. Thank you, Gareth. This was early on, so I think you covered a little bit of this already, Christian, but Gareth asks, can you explain what you mean by ready-to-go projects? Many large renewable projects will have not progressed to, say, planning permission stage due to the cost of upstream reinforcement costs. However, they would progress if additional costs were covered as part of the programme.
Indeed, and that's absolutely right. So if the main factor that is preventing it progressing is the grid connection, then that effectively means it's ready to go. So if you have lined up or are fairly confident that you'll get permissions and the finance and the other rights you need within the next couple of years to do it, and it's well advanced, but it's been effectively parked because of grid constraints, then that effectively means it's ready to go, and it's definitely one we want to know about.
Next question has come through from John Negus, and it's specific to Cornwall, but again, I think relevant for other areas. Cornwall has significant aspirations for generation, geothermal, offshore turbines, wave generation, etc., all very green. These are unlikely to be connection ready in the next 2 years. Are you taking these into account in your planning?
So yeah, the answer is yes. We are taking it into account in our planning, and it will, like you say, they won't be ready in the next 2 years, but they'll be taken into account for our next price control period. So if you have information on those that will help us, it will be fed into the team which looks after our business planning for the ED2 period starting in 2023. So yes, please let us know about that information if you haven't done so already.
Alec Minter has asked, what's the best way to stay updated on this scheme as specific reinforcement works are planned?
I think the best way is keep in touch on our website. We'll publish updates on our website on how things are going. We haven't fully decided yet exactly how we're going to publish the information on where we're targeting those investments, but it's likely to be on our website. Also, we have details of anybody who's joined in with this webinar, for example. So we're likely to be doing an update to anybody we have contact details for to basically tell you what's happening. Okay, thanks, Christian. Next question, we're getting loads of questions coming through, so thank you to everybody for those. We might not have time to go through all of those on the webinar because of time restrictions, but I do promise you that we will get answers to you after the webinar. Next question has come through from Jeremy Hinton. We've got a grid application in at the moment. If we get an offer and then you upgrade the network, will the price go down? No. To be blunt about it, there is some Q&As as well on our website and on the ENA website, and that's one of the questions in the Q&A there. But effectively, this is investment in new network for the future. So people who are already in the process won't necessarily benefit from this investment. So it has to be cut offline somewhere, unfortunately. So that's the position. Next question has come through from Jack Roberts. Is WPD able to invest in areas not highlighted on the green recovery map, such as Plymouth City Centre? Yeah, we are, and that's as I said during the slides. That's based on information that a lot of our existing planning staff are aware of, and some of the information based, we haven't included on there things which are very long term because this was a 2-year type initiative initially. So if there's information and network constraints that you're aware of that aren't shown, then please submit evidence on that, highlighting the postcode area and address area in the questionnaire, and then we'll be able to assess that along with the other areas, because part of this is also to verify whether we've got our map completely right. Next question comes from Dougie Hanford. We're likely to have multiple projects that we'd like to provide evidence for. In our submission of evidence, would you prefer a consolidated response or separate submissions for each project? So I think it depends on the areas they're in. So if there are multiple projects in different postcode areas, it'll probably be easier for us to have information on, depending on the number, of course, but have the postcode information on the specific areas, because it'll help us to filter it out more when we come to analysing the information based on addresses. Okay, great. Thank you very much. And as Christian said, there are a number of the questions that are being asked that are on our FAQs at the moment, but we will
update those with all the questions that are going to come through over the next couple of days from the webinars that we're hosting. So thank you for that. Next question comes from Tom Civil. Do these proposed upgrades include areas with fault level contribution issues?
So I think the answer is yes, because if there is a fault level issue preventing connection, I will consider that as well.
Okay. The next question from Hayley Warrens. Are small scale projects such as EV chargers in car parks considered? We've got identified targets for renewable energy projects to inform our future emissions trajectory. Are these targets helpful if definitive projects haven't yet been explored or planned?
Again, yes. I mean, information on wider plans, which is part of the information we've already looked at in terms of future predictions for our future scenarios, will be useful to determine the level of interest in the area. So you just need to put in the questionnaire that this is not a shovel ready or a ready to go project as we speak, but it is our aspirations, and put some sort of timescales on that if you can. So if it's a case of we will be looking to start this program in 2 years' time, and it will run for 5 years, and it'll be this much per year, then we can group that in with other evidence in the area, which if there's enough interest in that area, then that could well be one of the areas where we can target the investment, if there are capacity constraints, of course, in that area.
Great. Next question, and this is my worst nightmare because I'm not sure on how to say this name, but so apologies. It's Gitis Yakimovicius. I hope I've said that somewhere right. Let's say that there's a 10 megawatt export import capacity at the nearest substation or overhead line, but the project needs 50 megawatts. Would the network be reinforced to accommodate only the extra 40 megawatts or possibly more?
Again, it'll be potentially more. So it's give us the evidence of what your firm plans are in that area, and if there are options, if we may have a plan at the minute to upgrade to a certain level, because that's what we know about. If it's a larger transformer at a strategic substation, because we now have evidence that there's even more interest, then we will go for the larger transformer initially.
Okay, thank you, Christian. Just to let everybody know as well that we do have an email address, wpdgreenrecovery@westernpower.co.uk. So if there are any questions that spring to mind after the webinar, please do send them through to that email address, and we'll make sure we get an answer for you. The next question comes from Charlie Dunn. We have a proposal offer for a connection of a private wire to a high-use commercial user of existing solar farms. Export is limited by the cable capacity between the consumer and the substation. This means load management is required, reducing the benefit of the project to all stakeholders. Would local cable reinforcements be part of the consideration for such a project to allow a revised connection offer with increased capacity?
So maybe a slightly difficult one to answer without knowing some of the details. So this might be one that we can come back to you on. We can take your details and come back to you on, because it sounds quite a localized type discussion with a bit more information maybe needed before we can give an answer. But generically, there is no voltage restriction on this, so it will be upgrades to the network wherever it might be, if there is evidence in that area of green activity and projects that are ready to go. So that could be low voltage cable upgrades as well. Although I envisage that in the majority of cases, it will probably stop at a new 11 kV substation or 11 kV cables, and then going upwards from there in terms of, because of course we'll invest in our 33,000 volt network and 132,000 volt network as part of this as well, and that will clearly have benefits for a much wider area. So we'll target it in terms of where the maximum benefits going to be to the highest number of people.
The next question, and we're probably running out of time, but we had so many questions coming through, so thank you to everybody. The question is from Mark Fortune. In Somerset, we're looking at developing a residential charging policy and approach for electric vehicle infrastructure. As yet, we don't have exact locations for where these EVs will be installed or how many. Would we need to feed this into the call for evidence, and how would you want this information?
So again, I think information on wider plans is useful, but I think when you submit that information, you just have to distinguish it from projects that are ready to go and where there are existing, where you know about existing capacity constraints, which has prevented you from proceeding. So I think information on interest in the area again is useful, and it's also useful to substantiate some of our wider planning that a different team in WPD is doing in terms of predicting the future, in effect, and that engagement is already happening through some of our senior managers at a local level with local authorities. So we may already be aware of it, but please submit it. But please mark it that it's not a ready to go project as such, but we can still consider it.
Okay. This might have to be about the last question, I think, because of time. It comes through from Philip Morris. Will you accept match-funded proposals to improve value for money? Yeah.
So one of the things that we will look at is where there is other funding available, and wider benefits to, as it says in some of the criteria in the call for evidence paper, other infrastructure benefits. The more benefits, the better. So if there is some match funding available in a particular area, then please let us know what that is in the questionnaire and what you're proposing, and then we can take that into consideration.
Great. I think that's all the time we probably have for questions now, Christian. So back over to you.
Thank you, Michael, for that. So yes, thank you everybody for attending today. Got through some really good questions there. As Michael said, we will look to respond to other questions that we haven't been able to get to today. You will find the answer to a number of things. There is a Q&A on our website and on the Energy Networks Association website as well. And the call for evidence paper is on our website. And of course, we'll share these slides on there as well when we finish the webinars in a couple of days' time. But really, just to say that the really key thing for us is, we want to make sure that the investment we're going to make in the next 2 years goes to the right areas. There is £20 million per license area, which sounds like a lot of money, but it isn't when you start getting into large numbers of schemes. So it really will help us to make sure that that goes to the right areas for you to submit evidence of, say, your ready to go projects in those areas, and also your wider or your wider plans, which I guess will quite often be local authorities. Your wider plans for that area will help substantiate information we may already have, or help us to sort of say, look, we've got lots of schemes in this area who want to proceed, but also we have a prediction for the future here. So this is the right area to upgrade those transformers in, or to lay new cables and circuits to enable as many people as possible to be able to utilize that additional capacity that we unlock in effect as a result of this initiative. So please do that. All the information is on our website, westernpower.co.uk /green-recovery. Please fill in the question online if you can. And that's it from me. Thank you very much all for joining.